Kuyunamik, Kuyunamik, Eegeesiak, tunga sikat sitamani, teko tabane ketika Inuit, ilisaki gumamiyaka, dikuwilu si Inuit. I'd like you to look around the room and look at the Inuit who are here with me. If you would stand up, there's Alaskans over there, there's Canadians over here, we have Greenlanders. These are the people that you talk to when you want to come up and navigate around our waters or extract resources in our communities. So these are the people that you talk to. I'd also like to recognize the Indigenous peoples who are here in the room. I'd like to stand up as well, just to have a visual as to who you need to speak to when you come to our communities. Indigenous people? Not just Inuit, the Sami. Thank you. And I'd like to recognize and acknowledge the work that Okalik did to get especially Inuit here. I know that he worked very hard to ensure that people like me and Terry were here. So thank you, Okalik. I'm going to repeat some of what Terry said. I think it's worth repeating because we're kind of in the same boat across the circumpolar world as Inuit. Inuit are an international people. As the international chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, I represent more than 150,000 Inuit in Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and Chikaka. It's often difficult for Inuit from Chikaka to travel to forums like this, and I'm privileged to be representing them in these forums. Our relationship at ICC is based on a common culture and language. For most of human history, the indigenous peoples of the circumpolar north have been at the top of the world, living their lives and carrying on their traditional ways. Iceland is the only Arctic state that does not have indigenous peoples. No one lived here until the Nordic peoples arrived more than 1,000 years ago. So it's always interesting for me to attend conferences like this one. Suddenly, interest in the Arctic is now widespread. This has all happened in a relatively short time. In the short time I have today, I want to leave with two messages. The first is a cautionary message that I heard last night again when the President spoke, to those who might see the Arctic as an empty wilderness or an open frontier, where they have complete license to assert their own interests. The second message is an offer of cooperation and collaboration. Until recently, not many people from the South have had an opportunity to visit Arctic regions. Transportation costs are high, distances are huge, communities are remote, and the climate is not for everyone. For my first message, to say that the Arctic is not empty, indigenous peoples have lived in this region for thousands of years. For whatever reason, many newcomers to the Arctic see it as a governance vacuum or a region that should be considered the common heritage of mankind. These perceptions often overlook the people who live in the Arctic and minimize the importance of existing governance systems. For example, as Terry said, in my own country, Canada, Inuit are the largest landowners in the Arctic. About 20% of the Central Arctic Ocean can be considered international space. The rest of the land and sea in the Arctic is subject to the sovereignty and the sovereign rights of the 8 Arctic states. Inuit live in 4 of these Arctic states and have a variety of legal and political rights protected by domestic and international law. In 2009, Inuit adopted a Circumpolar Inuit Declaration on Sovereignty in the Arctic. In that declaration, we stated that the conduct of international relations in the Arctic and the resolution of international disputes in the Arctic are not the sole preserve of Arctic states and non-Arctic states. These matters are also within the purview of the indigenous peoples of the Arctic. Issues of sovereignty and sovereign rights in the Arctic have become tightly linked to issues of self-determination in the Arctic. Inuit and Arctic states must therefore work closely together and constructively to chart the future of the Arctic. But the Inuit voice is not just an Arctic voice. Inuit are part of the global family of Indigenous peoples, and we are also involved in promoting and protecting Indigenous peoples' rights through the United Nations. Inuit were pleased to see the UN General Assembly adopt the outcome document at the recent World Conference on Indigenous Peoples in New York. That was in September. The outcome document contains very important language. States commit themselves to make an effort to implement the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples locally, nationally, and internationally. I'm going through this quickly because I see the time. In cooperation with Indigenous peoples. So when I come to these conferences and hear all the plans that people from other parts of the world have for the Arctic, I sometimes feel a bit nervous. You can try a mental exercise, if you bear with me for just a second. Suppose the Inuit, Athabascans, Sami, and numerous indigenous peoples of Russia convened a conference in your part of the world, where we talk about or lay out new ways for you to govern yourself. Set new priorities for research and development in your communities. Impose new rules for how you protect your local environment and call for bans on which animals you can use on your farms and ranches. Would it be a different world? I suspect that you wouldn't pay much attention to us. Inuit are aware that the Arctic has great resource wealth. We are also aware of the increasing global demand for Arctic minerals, hydrocarbons, and living marine resources. Inuit are always described as being adaptable, and we are determined to provide for the material and cultural well-being of Inuit into the future. I'll just skim through we also have another declaration at ICC that was adopted in May 2011. It's called the Circumpolar Inuit Declaration on Resource Development Principles in Inuit Nunat. I encourage you to look up ICC's website and read through that document. In Inuvik, in July, where I was appointed the ICC chair, Inuit talked about the Kitingalyuit Declaration. It sets out our plan for the next 4 years while I'm acting chair. So the Inuit agenda for the Inuit agenda for the next 4 years include the Arctic Council and other international fora, environmental stewardship, safe shipping and fisheries, sustainable economic development, Inuit health and well-being, food security, communication, education and language, and traditional knowledge and science. So before I close off, I want to talk about my second message, that we are open for cooperation and collaboration with people who want to do business in the Arctic. We simply ask that you respect our culture and long history as residents of this beautiful region. And we ask that you consult with us before you try to reinvent the Arctic according to your own interests. And I'll repeat what Terry just said. If you want to help the Arctic, I also encourage you to think about what you need to do differently in the South, in the places where you live, rather than suggesting to us how we govern ourselves differently in the North. Consider how your activities in the South are impacting us in the Arctic and make some adjustments closer to home. I'm not suggesting that Inuit want to close the Arctic to others. We realize that the enthusiasm and interest of people and organizations at this conference are built on good intentions. ICC is always interested in opportunities to develop partnerships and work in cooperative and collaborative ways. So I look forward to work with all our governments in the Arctic states in moving and advancing our issues forward. Kweli.